Hello and welcome to The Bottom Line here on TVP World. This is where we unpack the main business and economic stories of the day. I'm your host, Marie Cato. For the fourth year in a row, the Ukraine Recovery Conference brings together global leaders of politics and international business. On Thursday in Rome, 2.3 billion euros have been committed to exactly what it says on the tin, Ukraine's recovery and investment. And we can only expect similar announcements before the end of this week. Jan Kennedy will tell us more in his report.
As Ukrainians clear the rubble after yet another deadly drone strike on the capital city of Kyiv, President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Rome, addressing the annual Ukraine Recovery Conference. There, he called on international partners to join the country's post-war reconstruction, a process, he says, will benefit all parties involved.
Rebuilding Ukraine is not just about our country. It's also about your countries, your companies, your technology, your jobs. The way we rebuild our country can also modernize your infrastructure and industries.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni announced that participants have pledged 10 billion euros toward Ukraine's recovery, but much is also happening on the sidelines.
There are more than 4,000 people participating in this URC network of events, I would say, not just those few hours of the main event. That's quite significant because that demonstrates that despite the war, different sectors, both inside of Ukraine and outside, are trying to understand what to do now with the Ukrainian economy, but also how to develop it to be sustainable for the future and for the joint benefit.
The event comes amid Ukraine's ongoing effort to join the European Union, a move which the Polish Economic Institute estimates could boost its war-torn economy by up to 26% within 2 to 3 years of accession.
Pulling it off would be quite challenging. However, it does not account for all the foreign direct investment as well. And it could push the growth higher. So even if you look at our more conservative scenarios, you still see gains of around 6-7%, or at least, even if in the most pessimistic one, 1 to 2%.
The Polish Economic Institute notes that Poland stands to gain the most among CEE countries from Ukraine's EU accession, with projected GDP growth of 0.17%.
We could gain from trade, from different trade relations, but in our opinion, we have to tighten the trade relations even more by a proactive investment presence. Not only trade that we showed in the model, but also some FDIs and joint ventures. However, there is a high risk of that.
Seeking to encourage more businesses to expand to the Ukrainian market, the Polish Development Fund has launched a new initiative called Team Poland.
This one-stop shop will provide them with a single access point regarding guarantees, financing opportunities, and other types of solutions that can allow them to be present before others enter the market.
Poland is currently the 10th largest investor in Ukraine in terms of capital expansion, with hopes that Team Poland will help improve that standing. And with the World Bank estimating the cost of post-war reconstruction, recovery and modernization at 500 billion euros, every effort will count.
So as much as it is reassuring to hear huge sums of euros and dollars commitments and package announcements being allocated to Ukraine, would it not be right and just to prioritize a ceasefire or peace in Ukraine, especially looking at Russia's escalating attacks? Otherwise, will there be much to invest in or recover? To understand whether or not the two streams should be reconciled, we are going to bring in Piotr Arak, Chief Economist at VeloBank. Hi, and thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, pleasure to be here.
So right now, the price tag for Ukraine's reconstruction stands at around 500 billion euros, according to the World Bank. It's a huge amount of money. No one has ever undertaken a project like that, maybe perhaps after the Second World War in Europe or Japan. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's a big sum of money that's been described by the World Bank and the IMF and other development institutions just to showcase the amount of money needed. But it can be scary, specifically for the founding countries. So the US, G7 economies that are going to pay more or less that amount of money for the reconstruction and the redevelopment, basically, of Ukraine. But the biggest question is, what actually is going to be rebuilt? What kind of new economy is going to be created in Ukraine? What kind of borders Ukraine is going to have after this war ceases to exist, or there's going to be some kind of stalemate happening at the eastern border of Ukraine? Is it going to lose more than 20% of its geography, or is it going to be a country still at war with Russia? So is there going to be some kind of agreement at the end? Because all this needs to be factored in. So what kind of investments, who's going to be responsible for the reconstruction, and then who's going to pay the bill? Because it might be the Russians at the end, with the assets of the Central Russian Bank being frozen in the West.
Absolutely. I wanted to speak about something that Ursula von der Leyen brought up, this idea, this new vessel of this public-private partnership, something that supposedly could be considered a new vessel, both for Ukraine and Europe, to kickstart some critical industries. I'd like to bring in a soundbite.
It will, together with the private sector, kickstart investment in energy, transport, critical raw materials, dual-use industries. We are literally taking a stake in Ukraine's future by leveraging public money to bring large-scale private sector's investments and help the rebuild of the country.
So this idea of this public-private partnership, do you think that this is feasible? Do you think this is possible?
It's very difficult to do business in Ukraine. So this is the honest truth. This has been a country that's been corrupt. They had a lot of issues when foreign direct investments, specifically Polish companies before the war, had bad experiences when doing investments and doing projects in Ukraine. And we would love to say that Ukraine changed a lot in that sense, but we know that even with the ODA and the additional financing that Ukraine received during the war, not all went to the right places. And there has been some misuse of the money that's been funded by the Western economies. So I wouldn't say that it's easy. This is what scares off a lot of businesses. Aside of the war and aside of the military threat, the opportunity is great. But then what kind of institutions are there to say that you're not going to lose your money? Not only to the Russians, but basically because of the corporate governance, the style of doing business, the corruption that is still being in place in Ukraine. So this is, I think, the biggest issue. Not even a smaller sum of money would make a bigger difference if it could be used well. So that's why it's good that we're trying to involve a lot of private business in Ukraine, but still the viability of actual projects there is pretty small. Some of them are currently more or less military based. So you're going to have some projects that are connected with the drone industry, with both American and European capital, even Polish capital. But this is strictly dual use or military expenditures and military investments.
But you say it's difficult to do business in Ukraine because of the corruption, etc. But if we do this together with Italy, Germany, France, Poland, and the European Investment Bank, do you not think that that would allow for better governance, better transparency?
Yeah, transparency, yes, but then you need to have a project and the actual partner to do the business. So it means that we can lose more money in the process of doing anything. And this is what scares off all the private investors in Ukraine. This is the main difficulty that they find. So with this kind of corporate governance, and you're even going to have the government agencies saying that there are some companies you shouldn't be doing business with in Ukraine because you're going to just lose money. And it's not because of I don't know, the bad business decisions, but basically because of corruption and stealing and using the additional funds. So I think this is the main challenge that Ukraine faces, and this is why a lot of private investments is still going to be very much not interested in doing anything in Ukraine. Ukraine. Aside of big public tenders where you're going to have, I don't know, Turkish, even most probably Chinese, and sometimes other companies and corporations which are interested in doing infrastructure projects, because then the margin is sufficiently high to pay off all those people in the process of doing that big project.
Absolutely. Zelensky's priority obviously is to ensure investment funds for Ukraine's reconstruction, if not survival, not to mention defense 4 years in. But he presents Ukraine's reconstruction as a business opportunity. So I want to just bring in a soundbite from today.
Rebuilding Ukraine is not just about our country. It's also about your countries, your companies, your technology, your jobs. The way we rebuild our country can also modernize your infrastructure and industries.
What do you think of his words?
Yeah, that's true. So Ukraine is a big opportunity. It's a big country with additional resources. It has a lot of human capital, which now is being educated across European Union and Western world. Basically, if some of those people are going to emigrate back to Ukraine, they're going to be increasing the capacity and construction of that economy. You know, there are US-funded universities through this war, which basically make new engineers, new people of the new economy, basically technology-based economy, educated through the process of hybrid education through the war, and this is in that sense a big opportunity for a lot of investments. The amount of money when we look at 500 billion euros, it could be seen as a lot, but then in comparison to the size of the European economy, it's peanuts. In comparison to the US economy, it's also peanuts. So it's not a big amount when you take into account the size of the Western economies. Then it's the ROI that we're going to get from the investments. We know that some of the technological advancements that they did throughout the war, the testing of military and warfare that Ukraine managed, it changes a lot of strategies that a lot of the military equipment manufacturing companies have currently. We know what to invest in, what's going to be more useful. We can cooperate with some of the Ukrainians in order to deploy and pilot. They have pilot phases of some of the new equipment that we might need in the future, hopefully not. Cybersecurity, IT, infrastructure, those are the sectors that probably we're going to see a high growth. How Ukraine is going to transform its energy sector, if it's going to be a member of the single market or the European Union, big question mark. How it's going to sell its energy actually to Poland and to the Baltic states, which it can do throughout
well, on
our
that note,
infrastructure.
how can we expect the Polish economy to benefit from all this?
One element is, of course, how are we going to prepare ourselves for the entrance of Ukraine to the single market and to the European Union when this happens? Are we going to do, and hopefully we're going to do the same as French, Belgian, and other agricultural sectors prepared for what we had in line for them. So big market of exports goods, and that's going to influence the whole European market. And this has happened with Ukrainian goods after the war broke out. And this is something that we need to prepare. So these are also the circumstances and the things that we need to negotiate with Ukraine. And unfortunately, Ukraine has to accept the Polish stance on those issues. So how much of agricultural goods they're going to be able to sell for a couple of years at the beginning of entering the market, and what kind of quotas are there going to be. And this is the first element, because the agricultural sector is going to be the one thing mostly, and the heated debate on that is going to be the most important one. Then overall, the economic growth for us is going to be higher. As for Germany, we're going to have a kind of large market of 3 times poorer or three times less earning money people on our eastern side, we could redeploy our own FDIs for the first time in the world. Typically, we invest just in Czech Republic and some Central European countries or in tax havens. So we don't have actual FDIs across the globe. But Ukraine could be this first opportunity for Polish companies to actually invest and have a process of growing on a different market. So the growth opportunity is there. I wouldn't say it's going to be tremendous and as life-changing as it was the European expansion in 2004, because this was a large chunk of Europe that then entered the European Union. But still, for us, the 0.02% of growth pace is kind of a lot, is I don't know, a similar amount that the next-gen funds have currently on the Polish economy. So you could say that the additional trade that we're going to create with Ukraine, selling our goods and services and then buying goods and services from them is going to be kind of significant for us. But the preparation phase is going to be critical. And unfortunately for the Ukrainians, they will need to accept the Polish trade targets and what do we see as acceptable in that deal.
I sense that you feel that this will be a point of contention, that we really need to make our point and make them accept that these are the standards and this is the way it's going to be.
One thing is economics. Of course, free trade is better, but we're way past free trade agreements and free flow of capital, free flow of people across European borders, or free flow of companies and investments. The World Trade Organization doesn't exist anymore. You could say that. So in that sense, we need to be protective in this new circumstance as the world we're in for the Polish market. And politically, if anybody does want to have or win elections or rule the country, you need to think about the agricultural sector, as did the French, the Belgians, and the Germans when we were entering the market.
Absolutely.
We had issues with that. They had issues with us. We needed to accept that.
Absolutely. I just want to bring up a report by the Polish Economic Institute that I know that you have been quite involved in and probably continue to be. I just want to bring up a map for our viewers. And in terms of Ukraine's accession to the EU, the economy could expand in the best case scenario by 26%. And here we can see a potential spillover effect for the Central and Eastern European region with figures, as we can see there, allocated by color. The numbers in themselves don't necessarily look like a lot, 0.13%, 0.17% for Poland, Lithuania, Hungary, less so for Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Romania. Can you just talk us through those numbers? You already have said a little bit about them. What that actually might mean for those countries?
Yeah, it's actually 0.2%. That's a growth pace of being in a recession or not. With a slowing Polish economy, we're to reach the growth pace of 2.7% by 2030. But our estimates and the IMF, for example, there are similar numbers. So the Polish economy is going to grow slower than it used to be. So any additional kind of boosters for the Polish economy, as the additional trade that we could have with Ukraine, then this number is very significant. But it means if we're going to have more jobs created, more opportunity created, more innovative companies that are going to be present on other markets, we could be the Germans in the Polish-German kind of relationship in the same situation. Probably as well not have perfect relationships with the Ukrainians as we do have with the Germans. But then, as the economic opportunity, the bigger one is for the German economy, from the additional trade that we had. And it also is for us. But this is going to be as beneficial for Germany. The entrance of Poland was for the trade and for the economic growth of their country, as it is going to be it was for Poland and it would be for Ukraine.
Okay, Piotr Arak, we have to end our conversation here. As great as it is to have you come in and for your insight, thank you so much for joining us. Piotr Arak, Chief Economist at VeloBank. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes The Bottom Line for today. I was your host, Marie Cato. We bring you the best of regional business Monday to Friday at 5:10 CET on TVP World. And in the meantime, for the latest in regional business, do follow us on X and on TVP World. Goodbye.